Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
You know those times when you get invited to a party as a guest?
I literally sat right across from Steven Tyler and I just asked him every question I could ever imagine about everything.
We're walking with Michael Jackson.
And you have no idea what you're in for.
I was not thinking about, doing the funky cold Medina with Home Loop.
This is a podcast about just that.
They're going to arrest us for being on mushrooms at a wizard park. We're in trouble.
This is Plus One Stories.
Thank you for listening and welcome back to another episode of Plus One Stories. I'm your host, Chris Donovan, and today we are talking to my really good friend, Gary Cannon. Now, this one's a little different because Gary's been working in the industry for a long time. I met him back in 2002, and his Plus One story, like I said, is a little different because he works as a fluffer. Now, he calls it a crowd warmer or something along those lines, but he's worked on the Craig Kilborn Show, the Carson Daly Show, Dr. Phil, Dr. Ken. He's worked on a lot of different shows, and what he does is he talks to the audience and gets them all hyped up to enjoy this live taping of a show. He gives gift cards. He does games. So his plus one is being the fluffer for all of these celebrities in their shows, like Dr. Drew. He talks about all the people he's met, and he talks about some of the problems he might have had, like maybe he was fired or thought he was going to get fired or somebody got hurt or he got sued. It's all in here. So go to thisisfunner.com to check out all the other podcasts and the online content that I do and enjoy this conversation with me and my good friend, Gary Cannon. Gary Cannon, I haven't seen you since it's been a life trip, or what the hell was that show we did?
This Job's a Trip.
That's right. Back in 2000 and Finn.
When was that? I mean, literally, boy, oh boy, I remember we were babies.
Yeah, it had to be 2002, 2003 max, I want to say.
Maybe that's what it was. I remember I looked at this old video, which, by the way, 20 years old. I was full of life. I was in shape. Things were great. And fast forward 20 years later, things have changed. But I'm still, no, it's crazy looking back on that. And that was a great little thing I got asked to do by, I think it was Bravo. Bravo reached out to me. They were doing a show called This Job's a Trip, where two regular people got to do something that they've never done before in the day of a life of somebody. And so since I was a comic, these two people, both from New York, wanted to do stand-up. So I trained them over 3 days. They did a mini boot camp of sorts. And at the end of the 3 days, they both performed on a real show at the Hollywood Improv. And I remember one of the things that they had to do was go on a radio station and talk about their performance. And so the idea was like, hey, radio and promoting shows is the most important thing of a comedy show, getting people out, butts and seats. And I remember we taped it at your station on a morning. And it was kind of a funny thing just to get them to feel what it was like to be actually part of a morning radio program. It was great.
Yeah, and when you do the comedy circuit, the improvs and stuff, you usually used to do morning radio, not so much anymore. Because everybody's got a podcast. But
yeah, it's crazy. And by the way, if you're a guy like Jim Gaffigan or a big name guy, you can literally sit in your house and knock out 30 stations in an hour. And if you hear them on all these different stations, you could tell it's the same thing, like they're just autopiloting it because they're doing so many things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like one of those press junkets where the celebrity sits there for 7 hours and does 400 interviews.
boom, boom, boom. So we did that, and it was crazy because I don't know if you were there on the final night. So there was a guy and a girl, Giselle and David.
Okay, I remember Giselle. Giselle Noel was her name.
Giselle Noel and David. And it was funny because I don't know if you remember this, but like Giselle during the entire kind of 3-day mini boot camp was, very outgoing, very fun, very extroverted. And you're like, this girl is going to absolutely nail the show. David was quiet. I think he was like an attorney, more introverted. Right. Remember that? Very type A, very stiff, stoic. And we're like, boy, oh boy, we were so worried how he was going to do at the final night on his graduation show I remember Drew Carey was there, which is insane. Yeah. Drew Carey was on that show. And we were so worried about it, giving him a pep talk in the back. And listen, David, you just got to loosen up. You got to this, you got that. I remember he did better than Giselle. I remember he went out just like, boom, nailed it. And none of us expected that. He was just spot on. And it's funny, people can still find it because they tried that show with a bunch of different professions, whether it was like a lawyer or a police officer, whatever it was. But it was called This Job's a Trip on Bravo. And Cisco, here's what's crazy. A year later, this company reached out to me and they were doing that whole switching positions, maybe a morning DJ or whatever, switching positions as just something that they would offer. You know what I mean? Like you could buy it. You could have a TV show. And I just remember I didn't do it because it seemed like a lot of work. But the one for Bravo turned out really, really well. And that's I remember them coming into the station. They got to be Drew Carey, but just crazy how the one person we thought was just going to just kill it and was just so confident in class and during our 2.5 days together and didn't do as well as the one who we were so nervous about. That's just how it turned out.
Well, I mean, I believe he was a lawyer, and that's kind of where I was thinking that he was working everything out in his mind and playing out his opening sentences or whatever you would do in a trial. And he had it all here and ready to go. He was just running it through his head. That's why he did better when Giselle. I know Giselle. I'm friends with her online, and she actually did a lot of stand up back then and tried to do some more after the show, but she definitely was a little bit more quirky. Definitely surprised. I think she got to her nerves.
Absolutely. So it was just funny, like looking back on that. We came into your station and it was just like, oh my God, you sent me a clip of that. It was like a memory that came up on Facebook and it was so awesome. I was like, oh my gosh. So, and I remember, but we had met way before that with the stand-up comedy back in the Ontario Improv days and just way before that.
Yeah, no, you helped me with my stand-up throughout the years and taught me some things, and I've done some shows with you, and you've done charity events for me and other shows together. I mean, we've known each other forever, so it's good to have you here. I'm so excited. Now, this is Plus One Stories, so get all that rigmarole out of the way. We talked a little bit at the beginning. We have a couple short stories we're going to go over, not one giant story like, my buddy setting his balls on, Larry Flint's desk. Nothing like that happened, I'm sure. But what do you got for me, Gary?
I'm so bummed. That was the story I was going to use.
Oh, man. I ruined it. Spoilers. Did that really happen? Did you really do that?
Did that happen twice? So this
probably happened more than twice in this.
What happened? So this was so I do something in the world of TV called audience warm up. And for those people who don't know, most shows have a person that is behind the scenes that is literally getting the audience going before the show.
He's like a fluffer.
Yeah, getting them excited, getting them hyped up, getting them ready for the minute that show starts, they're ready to go. A lot of people are tourists. They really don't know what to expect. They expect maybe the show just to start. So shows are different. If you do a talk show, you're doing like 15 minutes at the front of the show, then you bring out the star of the show, whether it's Conan O'Brien, whether it's James Corden, whoever that is, right?
What shows have you done?
Oh, wow. I started with Craig Kilborn. My dog wants to say hello, just so
puppy.
This is my friend. So just so you know, there's tons of shows in Los Angeles, New York that use audiences. But I started out, my very first gig was with Craig Kilborn. That was the very first show that I ever did.
That's awesome.
I was a backup guy to another guy, and I would fill in whenever he couldn't do it. Money was brutal. Show wasn't the best, but I did it. I did it because it was a great show to get my feet wet was a late night
Yeah.
show, 12:30. I mean, that's a big show following David Letterman. But was never really happy there because they always wanted the main guy to be there. They were bummed when it was me. They would walk in, they'd be like, "Hey, like they really would. You could tell that there was this disdain when I was there, even though I thought I was doing okay. But for that to be my first job was a pretty cool thing to me.
Yeah.
So, but I knew I wanted my own full-time gig. I knew that I didn't want to be in somebody's shadow. I wanted my own gig. That was the bottom line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Carson Daly had his show in New York, he was moving it from New York to LA. He had a show on at 1:35. Again, most shows have a warm-up if they have an audience.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about late night shows is you're only doing 15 minutes up front, and then the audience comes in, show starts, you can leave. Sitcoms, that's a whole nother nut. It's literally, you're there for 4 hours in between every take, in between every rewrite, from start to finish, as they're moving from the living room to the kitchen, the living room to, the garage. It's really a grind. So I always loved late night shows because they were so easy to do, and they were my wheelhouse. I could be a little dirtier. I could, you could get away with a lot more than you could on, say, a show like America's Funniest Videos or Dancing with the Stars or something like that. So I remember Carson Daly was moving a show from New York to LA, and I made some blind phone calls into the New York office because I had no idea who was producing it. I knew nothing about how the hiring process worked. I really didn't. I got lucky getting the Greg Gilborn show. So I called a bunch of people, left a bunch of messages, again, having no idea who was running this show, who hired the show, if they had a guy in New York that they were possibly bringing out to LA to be their warm-up guy. Didn't know any of it. So I let it go. Months later, I get a call from somebody. This is Nicole from the Carson Daly Show. We are coming to LA, and we're going to do a bunch of test shows. We would love for you to do a test show, and we'll see out of the 3 people we're going to use who the best fit is. Now, a test show is basically, just for those who don't know, a show that will never air. They're just going to run it, block with cameras, see how the set looks on TV, all this other stuff. The guests are literally a favor to Carson Daly. You're never going to get a big guest, but they're just trying to see how it looks on camera.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to bring in an audience, see how everything runs as though it were a real show, and then be done with it. Super simple, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of time the audience is paid too.
Well, this was an all paid crowd, and those are the kiss of death.
Yeah,
they are brutal because they have no investment in the show. You're never going to see a paid audience at Ellen. I mean, they are excited to be there. You're never going to see a paid audience at Jimmy Fallon. They're excited to be there. But, shows that are new, they just can't get an audience. And this was pre-COVID, years and years ago, where there's like 10 shows taping in a day. You think if somebody has a chance to go see the Big Bang Theory or this new pilot that nobody knows about, well, they're going to go line up for Big Bang Theory hours in advance, right? And you can always tell, because I've been doing this so long, whenever I pull up to a studio, I always know where the paid people line up, and I know where the real fans line up. And whenever I would pull up to a show and you would see 2 people at the gate and then 148 other people like in this little circle area waiting to come in, I would say to myself, this is going to be a bumpy day, because you knew 148 paid people who had no investment of the show. They would come in there, they'd read books, they would yell because they didn't get a free t-shirt. It was always like there was an issue that I was responsible for. So we decided to do, the show decided to do 3 test shows.
Okay.
They were going to do 1 on like a Tuesday and then 2 on a Wednesday. So there was a guy who did Tuesday. He did the warm-up on Tuesday. And by the way, I knew I needed this gig. This was my gig to lose. I needed it. I felt like I did the research. I felt like they called me for a reason. I needed to leave Kilborn. I wanted to get out of there. I really did, because I felt like I didn't want to be a backup anymore. I wanted to have my own show.
Yeah.
So I remember they did a show Tuesday. Wednesday, they did 2 shows. So all paid people. They were great. Just a great crowd, surprisingly, because what I would do is I would go out and buy my own stuff to give away to the audience, whether it was a gift card, whatever it was, right?
Yeah, do like trivia and stuff.
Whatever it takes to keep that crowd on their feet, right? Mm-hmm. So I do that. The audience is fantastic, just great. And I know that they're really, really good. I can tell. So the audience then between shows, goes out, they sit on benches because they're waiting for that second show to start. And now there's a new audience warm up that's coming in for the second show. So that would have been the third show, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a little worried because I was like, maybe I should have taken the second show. I really didn't know. So as I'm leaving, the audience is like, Gary, that was great. You were so funny. You were so great. I said, hey guys, listen, I said, I just talked to the producers, which is all nonsense. I didn't talk to anybody. I said, you guys were lively and loud. They really don't want that for this second show. They really want a little more mellow. Carson felt like it was too loud in the room. If you guys could bring it down, that would be fantastic. And I don't remember who that second warm-up guy was who did the third and final show, but I just remember literally sabotaging him so he wouldn't get the pick. Yep.
You entered Hollywood by lying and deceiving people. Hey, you fit right in.
Isn't that the way to go? Yes.
Yeah, it's either that or politics.
And then speaking of lying, this was also really funny. Every time we would do Carson Daly, we would have an audience, and some of them were regular people. A lot of them would come over from the Tonight Show. We'd walk over people that just got out of Leno. We would grab like 20 people who would still want to see another show. And I remember this clearly. I always would give away a gift card to El Polio Loco to the winner of the dance contest, right? I always had a dance contest. So it was always 2 hot chicks and a dopey dude from the Midwest. Just always 2 hot chicks, dopey dude, right? So how it would always work with these dance contests is the 2 girls would dance. Of course, they would just be killing it. Audience going nuts. As the second girl was dancing, I would always whisper to the guy, do me a favor, during your dance, take your shirt off.
Yeah.
And I don't know why people are willing to go with it, but I would say 95% of the time they would do it.
Well, you said a goofy guy from the Midwest. It means he's on vacation, means he's out in Hollywood trying to be crazy.
With his family. He thinks that there's backstage passes. He thinks he's going to show his family the inner workings of Hollywood, right? So
and he takes his shirt off and gets a new T-shirt to put on.
So what made this situation unique was I didn't have any El Polio Loco gift cards. I didn't have any. So I would always go and buy a few at the one in Burbank, right by NBC where we filmed, and bring them in. And that was always the gift card. It was always the goof gift that I would give the guy from the Midwest who won the dance contest. Well, before I was going to work, I ran in. There was a huge line. So what I did was I grabbed a blank gift card from the front. They're in that little tray.
Yeah.
And left. I was like, I'm just going to grab something, just a handoff, be done. So what I didn't realize is before the show, I was talking to this guy. I found out that they were from Pittsburgh, him and his family. I was talking to them for a few minutes. I'm like, hey, this is crazy. I'm going to be at the Pittsburgh Improv later this month. Why don't I have you guys out as my guest? Here's my phone number. We traded numbers. Everything was great, right?
Wow.
Fast forward to him doing the dance contest, him winning, me handing him a gift card, and the show ending. So I don't know, maybe about an hour later, I'm at a supermarket and I see a number coming in, 412. I know that's Pittsburgh. I was like, okay. He's like, hey, Gary, this is David. We met an hour ago at the Carson Daly show. I was like, oh, hey, David. I said, yeah, absolutely. I'll let you know when the show is coming up in Pittsburgh. I'll get you and your family and all this other great stuff. He's like, no, none of that. He's like, I'm at El Polio Loco right now, and this gift card you gave me for my family isn't working. And then I realized that I hadn't put any money on it. But I also realized you're in LA. Is this really where you want to go for a meal? Like, is this, I mean, those things aren't, Mastro's Steakhouse or even a Red Robin. So I'm shocked that this is something that he took his family to with pride.
Well, isn't it like 4 a.m. at this point?
No, because we taped the show about 6 p.m.
Oh, well, yeah, then he's screwing up life right there.
Yeah. So it was just odd to me that and then he says, is there somebody here at the restaurant that you can talk to and make this okay? Like I had a connection set up at El Polio Loco.
Yeah,
be like, hey, let me talk to Bob. Bob, don't worry, the gift card's good. And Bob would be like, okay. And by the way, when I gave away the gift card, there was only $5 on it. So it's not as though I would have given him a gift card to feed a family of 6.
Yeah, right.
I don't know who should have been more embarrassed, me for not loading money onto the card, or him for taking his whole family to this restaurant. The minute you would pull up, you'd be like, oh, well, we're not going to go. We're in LA. We're on vacation. Let's go to, something that's more
LA.
Yes. Something that's not going to give us, ER pains at the end of the night. So I just remember I always thought this, which was really interesting. I thought, am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get called into an office tomorrow? Is this guy called up the EP and just said, hey, is this the kind of scam you're running? I will never, ever forget that. And fortunately, nothing happened, but I will tell you, it was very frightening. And listen, I remember there were times when I finally got Carson Daly, where I would do things like just to get the audience motivated if we had a huge stop down. Like one of the things was I would have the audience run down the stairs as I would play the Price is Right theme music and see who would be the most motivated. And I remember a buddy of mine who'd done warm up forever. He said, do not do that. Something's going to happen. They're going to be running down the stairs. They're going to get hurt and they're going to blame you. And I said, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this almost 3 weeks. That's not going to happen.
Almost 3 weeks.
Almost 3 weeks. I just knew. And this was a guy who was a veteran warm-up guy. And I'm like, dude, listen, that's old style warm-up. This is what I'm doing now. This is what the kids want. So we start playing the thing, dun, 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 and like he comes running down. His foot hits poorly from the last stair to the floor.
And
he twists his ankle.
And
I just remember, okay, this is the last day I'm working here. The absolute last day I'm working here. And I just remember.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
He got back up into the audience. I gave him a CD of not even the band that was on that night, some nonsense that they had given us. And he kept saying, can I see the medic? I need to see the medic. And I was like, I don't think there's anybody around here, man. I just don't think so. Meanwhile, they are around, obviously.
Yeah.
And I literally tap danced around that whole thing, hoping he just left and forgot about it, because this happened a lot. This happened at Conan a lot, where I'd bring up 10 people for the dance contest, and inevitably once every 2 years, somebody would slip for whatever reason. Their leg would push out or whatever. And literally the next day I would get a call and it would be, hey, Gary, we need an incident report. The woman, Susie, on the far right fell and she's now suing the show.
Wow.
Like, wait a minute. So what happens is, because this happens, they get home and they don't think about it, but then they're telling the story to somebody else of like, hey, I fell, and then boop. Oh, you know what? You could possibly sue the show for that.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah. Feel free to do that. There was another great moment that I thought I was going to get fired at when Carson Daly was there. He had on Jennifer Love Hewitt, and I was in the audience. The audience was dead, just dead. And I was like, I got to do something. There's just no energy in this room. So there was a pause between conversation, and all of a sudden I just started applauding really loudly. The audience, because they're knuckleheads, they just follow the lead and they start applauding with me. Jennifer Love Hewitt stops and she said, why would this audience applaud my dog dying? I literally had no idea what was going on. I was almost out of it, just like the audience, but I felt like because there was no energy in the room, let me just anything. There's got to be positive being said. And the way she looked at me, I was like, I'm gone. We're done. This is a done deal. Done deal. Yeah. And
so how many times did you almost get fired?
Probably 6. And there was another great moment too. Another great moment where this wasn't on Carson Daly, but another show. Fortunately, I lasted at Carson for about 4 years, which was great. And then the show ended. But what was great is Dr. Drew was doing a morning talk show. Guy does everything. He was doing a morning talk show, and they realized they needed an audience. So they decided to bring in an audience, bring in a warm-up. They were bringing in 4 people that they wanted to test out. And I was like the third person that they brought in. And they said, this audience has been dead. We need somebody. Please help us. And I think obviously if it had gone well, I would have gotten the gig, which I really needed at that time. It was a decent paying gig, morning gig. So I go into the audience before anything even starts, Cisco. I want this gig. I bought a bunch of gift cards. I said, hey, listen, guys, it's us versus them. And I said, we need this audience to be on fire. And I said, whoever is my best, most enthusiastic audience member after that first break, you're going to win. I think I bought a $50 gift card to something, whatever it was. I bought it, right? So start the show. Audience is going nuts. I calm the audience down. Dr. Drew starts talking. And he said, I want you to meet my first guest, Lydia. Lydia was attacked, beaten, forcibly, anything and everything that you could think would be horrific for something to happen to somebody. This happened to Lydia behind a dumpster somewhere, whatever it was. Now, these audience members don't think, and I didn't realize what the topic was, but they don't think that, oh my gosh, this is horrific. They start clapping because they want that $50 gift card.
Oh, no.
So they're excited, even though they're not listening to the topic, they're excited for this. I was fired at the end of the day. Cisco, I didn't even make it to another show. I'm surprised they didn't fire me after that first act. I think they were confused as to what was happening, but I did get they're like, we can't, this is just ridiculous. They literally gave me the boot. And by the way, I was fortunate enough to do a radio show with Dr. Drew, and I told him that story. And it was funny because as I was leading into the story, he's like, oh no. Like he knew
who you were,
exactly where the trajectory was going. It was just absolutely crazy. Yes.
That's hilarious.
So needless to say, I've been kicked off many shows throughout the course of my life, but somehow managed to keep busy. I don't know how.
That's awesome. I know you did Dr. Ken also.
Maybe one of my favorite gigs ever. I mean, Dr. Ken was one of those shows that was run perfectly. He was great. So much fun. I just wrapped up The Masked Singer, another great group of people.
Did you do season 1 of Masked Singer?
I did. Just did season 7, just wrapped up.
Oh, okay.
And it was amazing. I mean, shows like that where they're super nice, they're caring, everybody works as a team. Then there's these other shows where, it's insane how bad it is. I mean, it's insane. I like shows that, I remember I did a show years and years ago. And again, I needed money. And not to say that, I mean, I certainly do now, but
Starving Actor.
What's that? Starving? Yeah.
Starving Actor.
So there was a show called Baggage. It was a game show hosted by Jerry Springer. Do you remember this?
No, but that sounds like him.
Horrible. You can tell it's bad. They filmed it up at a studio in like Van Nuys or Palmdale, or it was bad. And I remember the money was absolutely brutal, just brutal, but I needed it. And I remember the minute I got in, they were just beating me up. The producers, the audience, everybody was beating me up. And finally, a producer comes over to me and he says, listen, he's like, this audience stinks. And he's like, you got to get them going again. Now, this is 9 a.m. I have to be there till 5. We're filming like 4 shows.
Oh, shit.
And I had so much confidence, even though I shouldn't have. I said, hey, listen, I said, here's the deal. We both know the money here is brutal. It is garbage. I said, so we have a couple of choices. One, you can keep the money the same as it is, but you can't bother me the rest of the day. You just can't. You got to leave me alone. 2, you triple the money and you can bother me as much as you want. 3, we shake hands and part way like gentlemen. And I'm surprised I had the balls to do that because I was pretty new to the business. I knew the job and I just didn't want to burn any bridge at that point. And he was just shocked that I said that. He's like, let me get back to you on that one. I think he was shocked that I would even go that far. And he literally came back 10 minutes later and he said, let's just call it. And they let me go. And it was, and it was the end of it. And I couldn't have been happier. I was driving home. It was one of those things where you always hear a comic do a joke about when they get fired in the morning and they have to go back to the cooler, grab their lunch and walk it back to the parking lot.
Yeah.
I felt like that. I felt like at the time my wife was like, why are you coming home so soon? I was like, well, there was an issue.
Well, that's funny you say that. It sounds like you got fired for being too cocky.
Yes.
I literally got fired for being too cocky when I was 22 years old from the Grove in Anaheim. They literally said, "You're too cocky. We have to let you go."
Really?
Yeah. If I'd have known back then what I know now, I would have probably sued and won because I was a director.
What does that mean?
The scenario, the story, it goes like this. It was the building was just bought by the city of Anaheim, and a new company was coming in to run it. They had fired all managers except for like 2 of us, and they brought in all these new people. I knew how to do everything in the building because that's just how I work. I want to make sure that I know how to do everything. These new guys came in. They didn't care about doing their own job, security, setting up lights or anything. So something about the spotlights weren't on. And I go, yeah, of course that little fucker didn't turn it on. And that was over the radio. Apparently my button was stuck on. So then I was given a week paid leave, and then they called me back in. They told me I was too cocky. They loved me, but I was too cocky.
There it is. Okay.
So if you have any jobs in the fluffer business that you can throw my way.
Right there. I love it. I love
That's
it.
awesome. Oh, Gary. Okay. Is there any times you got to hang out after the show with like Ken or because I know you were friends with Ken a little bit.
Oh yeah. I mean, those were always great. I mean, those were great. I remember I'll never forget. I was at Carson Daly one time, and we had on some of the Detroit Red Wings, and I was from Detroit, and they were there, and they brought the Stanley Cup. So I remember getting to meet them with the Stanley Cup, which for me was fantastic. I mean, it's really cool. It's not necessarily like the bigger names that you get to meet, but it's like some of these like smaller, like, I remember getting to meet, and again, I know it's so silly, but I remember getting to meet and now having a friendship with Joey Greco, who used to host that show Cheaters on.
Yeah, he was on 21 Jump Street back in the day. Is that the guy?
No, different guy. Joey Greco hosted a show called Cheaters. It was great. Okay. And in that same realm, I became friends because he was on a podcast that Steve Byrne and I did. I became friends with Chris Hansen, who was on To Catch a Predator.
I've worked with him.
You have?
Yeah, we did podcasts before podcasts were very famous. It was called the Source, and he did the story about that turned into a movie with McConaughey and stuff, Whitey, whatever it was. We had that dude that whole movie's based on the phone from prison. Yeah, he was on the phone from prison along with all the FBI guys. We recorded it up in LA. It was so dope.
Wow, that's right, White Boy Rick, who was just released.
Yep.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's those. It's not even like the bigger, but yeah. I mean, getting to hang with Ken, and like, who has been nothing but an amazing like mentor and a friend, and has gotten me so much work. He's been fantastic. But yeah, it's like, but I like those kind of like offbeat, like, just weird kind of like,
my wife, my wife does morning radio, like we talked about before, and she's been doing it for 20 plus years at the same radio station. So she's met a lot of people coming through there. We've had opportunities to have dinners with lots of people, hang out. It's fun. It's great. We enjoy it. The only time I really kind of geeked out was when the brothers from Deadliest Catch, Josh and Jake, were at Morongo, I don't remember the hell where they were at. I think it was Morongo. And we got to have dinner with them, and we just hung out with them for like 3 hours, had shots, and just BS'd. That was like one of the cooler times.
It's really cool. Like, I mean, just like I remember being at a comedy show in Vegas, and Anthony Michael Hall was there and came back, and it was like, well, this is pretty cool. And then you also listen, I was just in Vegas, and I just got to work with, she was on the show. And, obviously for a lot of people who are younger, don't know who she is, but Marsha Warfield, who played Rod on Night Court. Like, to me, like, those are little cool moments where you're like, oh, wow, it all kind of like, we're on the same bill. We're equals here. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, you said you met Jennifer Love Hewitt, and she got you fired. I met her when I was working at Podcast One. She came in with the owner, and I didn't recognize her at first. And I shook her hand. And she goes, "Hi, I'm Jennifer." I'm like, "I'm Chris. Nice to meet you." And then I sat there for a second, and I'm like, my eyes, because she's like she's on my list. Like, yes. I get a free pass, and I just shook her hand, and I'm like, whoa. And I went over to my phone and I text my wife. I'm like, I just shook Jennifer Love Hewitt's hand. She texts back, "Are you okay? Are you going to be able to work the rest of the day?" It was, I mean,
you gotta call in sick.
I was already there. I couldn't call in sick.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's one where I didn't know I was meeting her until after, and I really, adore her, those kind of things. Have you met someone you don't like?
Oh my gosh.
No, not Augie. Augie doesn't count.
Who maybe I was hoping would be a better person than
yeah.
I do. I don't know. I mean, well, listen, I will tell. Well, here was somebody I didn't meet, but here was a show that I was really excited to work on, and then quit 2 weeks in because it was just a disaster. Was Dr. Phil?
Oh, I can imagine.
I mean, literally, I got that job during the pandemic, and literally needed the job and needed the work, and it was easily one of the worst work environments I'd ever been part of, and never met him, which is so odd because normally every show you work on, you meet the host or you meet the people, and and you could tell everybody there was running scared, just didn't necessarily want to be there. The vibe on the show was brutal. I don't know what's going on with him and his wife trying to sell their products, but it was literally brutal, and the money was bad. The people above him or below him were just kind of like so worried about losing their gig. And 2 weeks in, even though I needed the money, I just was like, nope, can't do this anymore. This is just a snake oil salesman. He is. I mean, they're just, and you ask people who work on that show, how do you like it here? And they'll just say it's a job. They won't, nobody will be like, this was great. This was, you know what I mean? Like, even I didn't even like Craig, like as much as people like Craig Ferguson, that was one of my least favorite jobs. He just was, an egotistical lunatic. You know what I mean? Like, just
Laura Ingram's that way. Laura Ingram's that way. When we launched her podcast, she was
really,
she would like her. She had one producer working for her. I had to send the engineer out there to help build the studio in her house. The producer would call me almost in tears every day. Like, he's like, I don't know what to do. She was just yelling at me. I'm like, dude, then quit. Or let me talk, I have to tell her, I'm going to tell her, I'll tell my guy, I'll tell my boss to talk to her because that's what he said. And he's like, no, just let it go. It's fine. I'm going to be okay. And I'm like, dude, you're just killing yourself right now.
I think I've learned too over the years, because I'm older now and I really don't care anymore, that just because you're in this position, that doesn't give you the authority to be a dick. It doesn't. And listen, I've taken jobs. I'm sure you have too. The money wasn't great, but the vibe on the show was amazing. Anytime I get a call, hey, we can't pay you this or whatever, but the vibe is fun. They're good people. I'll do those all day, every day. I don't care. But
go ahead.
But the minute it turns into, you have a Dr. Phil that the pay is garbage, the vibe is terrible, I'm like, what am I getting out of this? It's useless.
Even just Dr. Phil on your resume, like, isn't that big of a deal anymore. He's not.
No.
He's not as big as he was. That's for sure. Actually, I thought he was dead, but that's Rush Limbaugh.
You thought he was dead.
Rush Limbaugh. Okay. Well, I mean, you have this interesting career of being the fluffer, for lack of better words, for these shows. So you get to meet the hosts and the guests that come through. So
sometimes,
were there any? Now, like I said, I worked with Laura Ingram. She was bad. Were there any artists, like bands, musical artists that came through that you were like, yeah, I get to see them?
Green Day.
Oh, dope. Yes. Okay.
They were on Carson Daly, and we got to see a lot of these bands too before they were big, because Carson would break these bands. So I remember Adele, I think, made her TV appearance on our show like years ago. Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, and again, I don't know who these people are, but I remember Green Day was such a staple. And it was also cool too, because if you got to work early enough, you could see them rehearsing. And you were like right there. You're like, are you kidding? Like, this is insane. Now, my buddy who works on Ellen has seen every band from Elton John to Stevie Wonder. Like, that's got to be amazing. But
yeah,
I'll never forget, there was a time at Carson Daly where I didn't know who the band was, whatever the band's name was. And I remember telling the audience, I'm like, oh my God, guys, you are in for a treat. This band is amazing. You're going to love them. I heard them in rehearsal. They are fantastic. So all of a sudden, these guys start heading onto the main stage, setting up. And I was like, here they are, guys. How about a round of applause? The executive producer looks at me and he's like, that's not them yet.
That's the crew.
That's the crew. And I was literally stroking them off. Like, I watched them in rehearsal. I have all their albums. And just, I'll never forget a time too where, I remember the band. It was a pretty well-known band. Maybe it was Train or somebody to that effect. And it was an all-paid audience. And they did the song once. There was a technical glitch. So I said to the audience, hey guys, great news. We have to do it one more time. Re-record the song. People start booing. Booing. Getting up, walking out. I mean, it was like, yeah. And Train, I mean, that's a decent band. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have some slow loser songs, though. So I agree with the...
So you...
I would have been...
I'm
yeah,
like,
can we get another band?
I went to... were trying to leave.
That's like I went to Kimmel once. We were lucky enough to go to Kimmel. Crossfade was performing. That's who I got invited with, and we did a whole radio station promotion. Ended up in the green room. This story's been said on here. I was the one everybody wanted to party with.
Okay.
I was with another band called the Prom Kings, who I was hanging out with, and then on the show was Larry the Cable Guy and Michael Moore. So. Okay. And security was watching me in the green room going, yeah, the guy over there, the red shirt. Yeah, we got to watch him. Make sure you're watching him. I'm eating all of the buffet. It was fun. I didn't get in trouble, but it was a good time because I got to go right up front stage for Crossfade. Got to see him do the rehearsal, all that stuff. Got to see the audience warmer for Kimmel. I don't know who that was, but
I'm embarrassed. It's funny because there was a moment where when you would have all these paid people at Carson Daly, at the end of the night, they would go out and get their $14 or whatever it was. Yeah. So they would be in an area where the guy was in charge of paying them, and he had a big sack of money and would just pay people, whatever. And there was one day, I didn't witness it, but I heard the story, which was great. Somebody obviously knew that there was a guy with a sack of money that was paying people, and he knew that he'd have money. So literally some guy storms in, grabs the bag of cash, and takes off. Well, you have 100 audience members that know they're not going to get their cigarettes and hot dogs at AM PM if this guy's running off with a bag. So they chase him, tackle him down, and beat the shit out of him. And all those audience members got paid that day.
And I bet he didn't file a report.
Nope, absolutely not. No report. I'm sure he was in the audience that next day. Probably sitting there waiting to get his real $14. He just didn't want to earn it.
I did a couple of those paid gigs because I was working at Central Casting doing I don't even know the shows anymore. But the cool thing was when we got breaks, we were able to walk into like Universal Studios and mess around for a bit. So those are always cool gigs. But I know it's been forever since we've talked, and I've had you on here for a while, Gary. But thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, dude. Oh, my God. Thank you. It's been forever. And thank you for your friendship over the years. You've always been so great to me. And I'm hoping that time doesn't go by that quickly before we can see each other again, because it's long overdue.
I agree. I'm going to try to make it up to LA here very, very soon. And if you're in Ontario or Brea anytime soon, let me know.
I will be. Absolutely. I'm sure I'll have a date.
Yeah. And then anything you want to promote now?
Just my website, GaryCannon.com. It has all my shows coming up. And whenever I'm in town, I'm always at the Hollywood Improv. So, all my stuff is on the web.
He knows everyone in the business. He's been here long enough. He's opened. He's hosted so many shows at the Hollywood Improv. If you don't know, they'll put like 10 comics up in one show. So he knows all of them.
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's nice. I feel at home. Yes. That is my home club, and I love it. And I love being
Rita's still the GM?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, tell Rita hi for me when you go back.
I will. Absolutely, man.
All right, Gary. We'll talk soon, man.
Love you, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Take care.
Bye.
You've survived another story. Thanks for listening, and please let us know what you think about the show by leaving a rating and review. If you have a story or want to connect with Chris, go to thisisfunner.com.